Shalom. We'll be in the 34th chapter of Ezekiel. We'll be picking up where we left off last week. I keep telling you all we're on the home stretch, and then we cancel for weather or what have you. So we will get there. We will finish Ezekiel, and I have a feeling where I'm being led after that. But we'll talk about that as we get a little closer. Is everybody there? The word of Yehovah came to me. The word of Yehovah came to me. I have reiterated time and time again in this series that when we say the word of Yehovah came to a prophet, we're talking about Yeshua, Mashiach, in pre-incarnate form. And I know not everyone in the congregation agrees with me, and that's fine. This is my understanding of it. But today we're going to get into some things that I think will clarify a little bit of why I feel that way. The word of Yehovah came to me, O mortal, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them. Now let's think about this. Okay, when we read prophesy, the instruction to prophesy, we need to think about the two meanings of the word prophecy. Okay? One is what most people think it is to foretell the future. Okay? The other is to tell forth from the Torah. Okay? And so when we read this, we can't just assume which one he's going to be doing, because a true prophet does both. A true prophet will foretell the future by telling forth from the Torah, by knowing what the Torah says will happen. Take, for example, Daniel read the book of Yirmiyahu, and said that Yirmiyahu, by reading that, he knew what the Yirmiyahu predicted, a 70-year captivity in Babylon. He counted the years. He knew that the time was close. And if you read Yirmiyahu, he knew that it was 70 years because he knew what the Torah said about the breaking of the 7-year Sabbath. Okay? And so he knew how many times the children of Israel had not kept the 7th-year Sabbath. That's how he calculated that. So he was able to foretell the future by telling forth from the Torah. So let's take a look at what's going on here. It says, to the shepherds. Okay, shepherds here can mean multiple things. It could mean the political leadership. Sometimes in Scripture it means that. Usually, in this case, that's what we're looking at. In this case, we're looking at the religious leadership. Okay, we're looking at the priests. We're looking at the rabbim. We're looking at the eldership. Okay, and so the first part of this message, really, Melech, you and I need to be taking this to heart. Everybody does, but we need to be looking at this. And Yarden, were he here, would need to listen closely, because he's at an age now where he could be considered for that role. It says, to the shepherds, thus said Yehovah Elohim. You notice it's not thus says, thus said Yehovah Elohim. He says, do you remember back when the creator of the universe said this to you? All you shepherds of Yisrael who have been tending yourselves. It is not the flock that the shepherds ought to, is it not the flock that the shepherds ought to tend? Wait a minute. You know where that came from? It came from a book we call Isaiah. Remember Isaiah? Prior to Ezekiel, he was prophesying, and he kept talking about the shepherds who had let the sheep go astray. Okay, now the prophet is referring to an earlier prophet, an earlier prophecy that referred to Torah. You partake of the fat, you clothe yourselves with the wool, and you slaughter the fatlings, but you do not tend the flock. Can we see an allusion here to the sons of Yaakov? When Yusuf was sent to check on the doings and the safety of his brothers, and he came upon them, and they were having a little party, and they decided not to let Yusuf go back and tell Yaakov what they had done. But they were found out in time. And the shepherds of Israel were being found out here in time. You have not sustained the weak, healed the sick, or bandaged the injured. You have not brought back the strayed, or looked for the lost, but you have driven them with harsh rigor, and they have been scattered for want of anyone to tend them. Scattered. They have become prey for every wild beast. You notice everything they have done is exactly the opposite of what the good shepherd is prophesied to do. Everything that Mashiach was supposed to do, they have not done. So one thing he's telling them here is that promise that I gave you of a shepherd, of perfect leadership, Israel, you don't have it yet. My sheep stray through all the mountains and over every lofty hill. My flock is scattered all over the face of the earth. Wait a minute. Didn't they all go back to Judah? Isn't that the false teaching that was just called out in the Torah teaching earlier, that where Brother Melech was talking about how what he was told by a leader in a church one time, and he said, but it doesn't make any sense, and I agreed with him, and right here it's saying they're scattered all over the earth. They didn't all go north into Yehudah. They went everywhere. With none to take thought of them and none to seek them. Hear then, O shepherds, the word of Yehovah. Oh boy. He says, remember all that? And this is what happened because you didn't listen, so you better listen now because this is the new one. This is something you haven't heard before. It's not these words. As I live, declares Yehovah Elohim, because my flock has been a spoil, because you have robbed them. My flock has been a prey for all the wild beasts, for want of anyone to tend them, since my shepherds have not taken thought of my flock, for the shepherds tended themselves instead of tending the flock. Hear indeed, O shepherds, the word of Yehovah. Thus said Yehovah Elohim, I am going to deal with the shepherds. Uh-oh. Once again, we go back to the sons of Yaakov. What do you mean? My favorite son was killed. And years later, when it was found out that he was not killed, and his sons were blessed with a double blessing in his stead, you know that the sons who faked his death, sold him into slavery, you know that they were standing there saying, why are my sons being double blessed? Because they were hard-hearted and thick of mind and skull, and they didn't think about, I caused this. I brought this on myself. They were shepherds. Brother, we are shepherds. And woe to us. Woe to us if we use the flock for sport. Woe to us if we take from the flock and give not. If we don't go and grab the one who is lost, if we don't drag them back to the truth, woe to us. Because he will deal with us. I will demand a reckoning of them for my flock, and I will dismiss them from tending the flock. The shepherds shall not tend themselves any more, for I will rescue my flock from their mouths, and it shall not be their prey. For thus said Yehovah Elohim, here am I. I am going to take thought for my flock, and I will seek them out. As a shepherd seeks out his flock when some in his flock have gotten separated, so I will seek out my flock. I will rescue them from all the places to which they were scattered on a day of cloud and gloom. Now, what is the day of cloud and gloom? A lot of opinions there. Personally, I think the great day of cloud and gloom was going to be when the tribes were released. First, the cloud and gloom of being in captivity, but then when they're released, but because of the situation, political situation, the wars going on, they couldn't even go back to the land, so they had to scatter, just as prophecy said they would. Okay, but he says he's going to gather them back. What he says first, he's going to go out and find the ones that are lost, and that sounds like we're talking about Mashiach. Okay, good shepherd. I leave the 99, I go find the one. Do you remember that story? But what does he say? He says he will gather them from everywhere they're scattered. He's talking about us. He's talking about every person in this room, because every person in this room has ethnic Israelite blood. Every person in this room is descended, although not in a perfect unbroken chain. We had ancestors who walked away from the covenant. Everyone here was a Ben or Batzor in one way or another. But we are scattered across the earth. And he has begun to call us home. He has called some of us who grew up in pagan heathenism. He called those of us who grew up in the lies of the modern church to come home to the truth of Torah. And eventually he is going to call us home into the land. Maybe not in our lifetimes. I dream about it. I dreamed a week or so ago that I was living in Israel, in the land. I would so love to do that, but so far he hasn't made that a possibility. In fact, he's put roadblocks in the way when I wanted to go there, or allowed them to be roadblocks, I guess. But I dream about it because it's a promise. But I know that in the resurrection I will live there because that's his promise. Eretz Yisrael will be my home, and it will be the home of every person in this room if they're clinging to the covenant. I will take them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them to their own land and will pasture them on the mountains of Yisrael, by the watercourses, and in all the settled portions of the land. That's exactly what I was talking about. But you notice once again, brother, and isn't it wonderful how he confirms for us what we believe we know, or teaches us that we're wrong. He does that sometimes too. But today you said you did not believe that doctrine, and I told you I agreed it was false. And today, in the Word, in the prophet speaking from the Torah, he says that is false. He says that we are scattered in the countries, and he is bringing us. I will feed them in good grazing land, and the lofty hills of Yisrael shall be their pasture. There in the hills of Yisrael they shall lie down in a good pasture, and shall feed on the rich grazing land. How many ways can he say he's giving us the best? How many ways can he say not only is he bringing us home, and that would be just the blessing of all blessings, just to come home and live there and dwell there in his light. But he says, not only am I bringing you home to the land that I gave to your ancestors, I'm bringing you to the very best part of the land, and all of the grass will be green. The land will be fertile for you. You know, the church likes to say that we're going to sit on clouds and play harps and have wings. You know what? That may sound great to some people, but being an old farm boy, I can't think of a more beautiful picture than to go to Israel, to live where the grass is green and everything's fertile. And if I get to spend eternity growing my crops in Eretz Yisrael, I will be happy. They can keep the clouds, they can keep the wings, they can keep the harps. I myself will graze my flock, and I myself will let them lie down, declares Yehovah Elohim. I will look for the lost, and I will bring back the strayed. I will bandage the injured, and I will sustain the weak, and the fat and healthy ones I will destroy. I will tend them rightly. The fat and healthy ones he will destroy. You know why? Because those are the ones who became fat and healthy by taking advantage of the ones that they were supposed to care for. Woe to us if we become that brother. And as for you, my flock, thus said Yehovah Elohim, I am going to judge between one animal and another. You know, I just a few weeks ago argued again with a mainline preacher who said that the Old Testament is for us, he says for you, meaning Jewish people, okay, and the New Testament, as he calls it, those are his terms, not mine, you guys know that. Tanakh or Hadesh is what I would say. He said the New Testament is for us Gentile believers, and there's no real connection. You all are all about God the Father, and we're all about God the Son. That was a whole other argument I didn't have with it. Okay? But it's strange that I am going to judge between one animal and another in the flock. Sounds a whole lot like Mashiach in the Brit Hadash, saying that I'll have the sheep get to one side and the goats get to the other side, and the sheep are mine and the goats are not. It's almost like it's one book. It's almost like Mashiach was referring to the prophets who referred to the Torah. Actually, it's not almost like anything. It's exactly what it is. And the only way someone cannot see this, someone saved. Now, someone who's unsaved, who's not in the covenant, okay, who says they don't understand it, I get it, because it's foolishness to a carnal man. That's what the word says. Okay? But, as we said in the song that Jacob and I wrote the words, and like 10 years later, he wrote the music. Okay? The song is called I Want to Be Your Man. It's a prayer. Okay, and he says that you showed to me a wisdom wiser than the wisest man. Okay? That foolishness that the carnal man sees, it's foolish to him because his mind is incapable of understanding true wisdom. Okay? So if an unsaved person reads this, they're not going to see the connection between what is said here in Ezekiel and what is said in the gospel. But if a person professes to be saved and they read both and they don't see the connection, then I have to question, are they really saved? Because the only way a truly saved person could read these two things and not find the connection is if they don't want to. If they prefer the lie, and then I have to ask, are you sure you're saved? Are you sure you're set apart to holiness? Are you sure you're in the covenant? Because if you don't see that, you're not reading, or you're not wanting to understand it. To the rams and the bucks, so the male sheep and the male goats. Now we're doing a little bit of a switch here, and now young Jacob over there, and Yarden, if you were here, Justin, everyone, every male who comes and sits here needs to listen to this. Because now we're not talking about the Kohanim. Okay? Now we're not talking about the eldership. We're talking about the eldership in the family. We're talking about the men. So what he means, he says the rams and the bucks. He says the mature males. You better listen up. The rams, who are the male sheep, need to listen up because they need to know what's expected of them. The bucks, who are the male goats, need to listen up, because you know what? If they enter into the covenant, they can become the rams. To the rams and the bucks, is it not enough for you to graze on choice grazing ground, but you must also trample with your feet what is left from your grazing? Is it not enough that you come and you get the truth of the word? Do you have to cling to it and do all that is right, and somehow through your choices and your actions turn around and kill that promise for your children, for your wives? And is it not enough for you to drink clear water, but you must also muddy with your feet what is left? I don't know how many men I know who have heard the gospel, have heard about the water of life, have partaken of it, and then teach their children or their wives because their wives don't want to hear it, or because they don't want someone to judge them, or because of whatever the situation is. They don't want to be an outcast in their family. They don't want to have to argue with the in-laws who say, how dare you teach my wife something different than what I taught her. And so they muddy that clear water of salvation. And they bring in doctrines of man, and they cloud it up to the point that the wife or the children don't ever really understand the true gospel. And must my flock graze on what your feet have trampled and drink what your feet have muddied? Assuredly, thus said Yehovah Elohim to them, here am I am going to decide between the stout animals and the lean. Because you pushed the flank and shoulder against the feeble ones and butted them with your horns until you scattered them abroad, I will rescue my flock, and they shall no longer be a spoil. I will decide between one animal and another. Ouch. You know, sometimes my children think I push them too hard to do things like learn what the scripture says and what it means, or learn their Hebrew letters. I don't ever want my children to eat trampled grass or drink muddied water. And I don't ever want to stand before the true shepherd and have him ask me why I didn't provide good grass and good water to my lambs. Because really they're not my lambs, they're his lambs. Then I will appoint a single shepherd over them to tend them. My servant David. Now here's an interesting twist for you. The mainline church, if they read this, take this out of context, and they say, that means someone from the line of David, that means Yeshua. They don't say Yeshua, they say Jesus. They say, he's him. Because he is David. He is not David. He's of the house of David. He will reign. He will rule. But if it meant someone of the seed of David, it would say someone of the seed of David. It says, my servant David, that literally, David, shall be a ruler among them. You notice it doesn't say the ruler of all of them, over them, a ruler among them. He says this is part of the covenantal promise. It's saying that my beloved, literally that's what David means, my beloved servant will be a ruler among them. He's saying the patriarchs who came before, who were of my covenant, I will resurrect, and they will rule over and teach my people accordingly. He shall tend them, he shall be a shepherd to them. Sounds like he was a shepherd in life, huh? I, Yehovah, will be their God, and my servant David shall be a ruler among them. I, Yehovah, have spoken. And I will grant them a covenant of friendship, like the one he granted to David, right? Okay. I will banish vicious beasts from their lands, and they shall live secure in the wasteland. They shall even sleep in the woodland. I will make these and the environs of my hill a blessing. By his hill, he refers to Mount Zion. I will send down the rain in its season, rains that bring blessing. Okay? Never again a flood. Remember that teaching? Okay? He will bring down rains that bring blessing. The trees of the field shall yield their fruit, and the land shall yield its produce. My people shall continue secure on its own soil. Really? Secure on its own soil. Why? Because he's going to bring us back. If we were already there, as the doctrine that Melech was talking about earlier said, he would not have to promise us security on our own soil. Why? Because we would have already been there. The fact that he says he will gather us there and he will make us secure shows that that is the doctrine that was quoted. As thankfully, I'm glad you were wise enough to see the error of that doctrine, brother. That the doctrine that was quoted cannot be true. It must be a false doctrine, or the Scripture lies. One or the other. If you believe the Scripture lies, stay after service. We'll sort that out. They shall know that I am Yehovah when I break the bars of their yoke and rescue them from those who enslave them. But they were a free people when he wrote this. But he did break the bars and rescue us from those who enslaved us. That's true. He used the Persians to break down the Babylonians and set us free. They shall no longer be a spoil for the nations, and the beasts of the earth shall not devour them. They shall dwell secure and untroubled. I shall establish for them a planting of renown. They shall no more be carried off by famine, and they shall not have to bear again the taunts of the nations. Won't that be great? How many times do we get taunted by the Gentiles? You crazy Jews and your Sabbath days. Oh, come on, just eat some pork. It's not going to kill you. I heard that, and I was heard that a few days ago, and I was reminded, isn't that exactly what the serpent said in the garden? Go ahead and eat what he told you not to eat. It's not going to kill you. You're not going to die. And because they listened to him and not to the Creator, death entered the world. They shall know that I, Yehovah, their Elohim. Isn't that beautiful? Their Elohim. Our Elohim. And with them and they, Beit Yisrael, are my people, declares Yehovah Elohim. Now, there's two ways I can take that. Now, I went back and studied some of the Hebrew. I'm still not sure what it means. Will it be that we will know through this that he is our Elohim and we are his people? Or will it be that the nations will know when this happens that he is our Elohim and we are his people? And maybe it means both. Maybe that's why it's written the way it is, so that it's not really clear which one it means. But this is a promise that is given to us. What? That we will begin to gather back into the land. that the land that was promised to our fathers will be ours, that we will be miraculously protected. Has anyone heard of a little event that happened in 1948? Has anybody heard of a thing called the 6-Day War? Has anyone here heard of the miraculous defense of a land, Eretz Israel? A nation that was wiped from the map, a language that died out except in scholarly circles, and the people gathered back into the land and were attacked on every side, and in 6 days turned back 5 nations, every one larger and more powerful than ourselves. And I say ourselves because this is a promise to us. Not just to the people who are already living in the land. It is a promise to us who will someday live there. By those 2 events, we know that He is our Elohim, and we know that we are His people. And the nations know that He is our Elohim, and the nations know that we are His people. And it cannot be refuted. They took the data on the 6-Day War to leaders at the Pentagon, to military science instructors. I actually studied one of them, under one of them when I was a cadet. This information was given to him. He was military intelligence. And they asked him what kind of secret data did the Israeli Defense Force have to get from inside the military leadership and the political leadership of all of these 5 countries and acquire it within 6 days and deploy it and turn out back all of these countries. And he said there is no possible way that could have happened. And he, being a non-believer, called it dumb luck. And he stood in front of my cadet class and talked about this in a lecture one day. And he said, sometimes wars are won by dumb luck. He said, that's rare. It's extremely rare, and he could only give the class one example. The 6-Day War. I don't believe that it was dumb luck. I believe that it was the powerful hand of the living Elohim. Yehovah, the creator of the universe, the God of Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, the God of our Avim, Navot. And by no other means can a country as small and as defenseless as was Eretz Israel at that time turn back 5 stronger countries in 6 days. For you, my flock that I tend, are men. Think about that. You, my flock, so the flock that he owns, flock that I tend, meaning he's not entrusting other people in this, at that point, when he's talking about in the days of perfection, eternity to come, he will no longer we will no longer have to have Mohim, Rabin. We will learn at the feet of Mashiach. He says, we are men. And I am your Elohim. That is such a definite inarguable point when you read the Hebrew. And yet most people in our country never read it in the Hebrew, or never read it at all. And if they read it, they don't read it in the Hebrew. There's no discussing that. We are His flock. He tends us. We are men, and He is Elohim. Declares Yehovah Elohim. Do we have a midrash?